What is up, guys? Sophie here, back with another topic. If you are new to my channel, don't forget to like, don't forget to share, and don't forget to subscribe. And don't forget to check the description box where I put a lot of stuff, particularly if you want to read the Bible from front to cover. I have a private Facebook group. It will be launching 1/2021, but you can join now because I'm going to be sharing a whole bunch of tips and updates until then, and you will not be able to join after December 31st. So I will leave that link down below. So now what we're going to be talking about today is the story of Tamar, and particularly how a lot of women can relate to the story of Tamar in the sense that it's a lot of family dysfunction, it's a lot of trauma, it's a lot of issues. And so the main of the situations about Tamar that I feel like a lot of women can relate to is a lot of what happened to her just simply was not her fault. Because the first, when we see the situation with Tamar opening up, we see that a whole bunch of stuff that is happening to her is based off the decisions of other people. So in the particular issue of 2 Samuel chapter 13, when it first starts off, her brother fell in love with Tamar, her half brother, and he was all sad about it. And so her half brother, Amnon, basically was talking to his friend, and his friend was like, oh, just go to bed and pretend like you're sick. And when your father, David, comes to see you, just tell him that my sister, Tamar, come serve me food and let her prepare it in my sight so that I may eat it from her hand. So the issue with this is the aspect of manipulation. So I know, like a lot of women in relationship, you guys may have been manipulated, or you might have felt manipulated, that men will say anything and do anything in order to get what they want from you, because that's exactly what this was. This wasn't a care for Tamar. This was only to meet his selfish desires and to get Tamar in a position that her half brother and his friend, apparently, the whole manipulation, other people always got stuff to say, right? To get her in a compromising position in order to take advantage of her. So I think the biggest lesson that we can learn here, or the biggest thing that you may have gone through even as a woman, is that oftentimes you might feel like, oh, wow, this man really showed love for me, and he really kind of, went above and beyond and all this, that, and the third, only to find out that he might be using manipulation tactics, or he might not have even shown love for you. He might be using this gaslighting or manipulation tactics in order to get you right where he wants you, not because he loves you, but to get in a position to get what he wants from you and to discard you, basically. The next point that I want to get into is the daddy issues. And the crazy thing that is, David is Tamar's father, but David was not necessarily a good parent. Yes, he was a man after God's own heart, but he was not a good parent, because really, out of all of this, he went to speak to his son and was like, what's wrong with you? And the son was like, oh, come let Tamar serve me food so I can eat it from her hand. And so if we go to 2 Samuel 13:7, it says, then David sent word to the house of Tamar saying, go to your brother Amnon's house and prepare some food for him. Why would this father send his daughter to basically go to feed her half brother from her hand? That is nowhere near appropriate. And so I have a video that I will link down below. As adult woman, if you have daddy issues, I have two of them actually. Daddy issues can hurt us in relationships. Daddy issues can hurt dealing with them, because sometimes when fathers are not in tune with their daughters, they will go and tell them to do things or to make bad decisions on their behalf, only for their daughters to get traumatized by all of this, simply because of a decision that David said, when really it was David's responsibility, who was her father, to protect her. He could have sent some servants with her. He was king. He could have sent somebody to supervise her, but it really was a lack of caring and prioritizing a son. And I know some women even have dealt with that situation where you might feel like, oh, my father or my parents have prioritized the men in the family, but not necessarily the women in the family. They give the men everything and they give the women nothing. But really, that's what this was, oh, I don't really care about, what position I put Tamar in. Ultimately, your brother needs something. Go and feed him some food. I don't care to make sure you're protected. I don't care to walk with you. I don't care if your servants walk with you. Basically, he put her in an uncompromising position. So the next point I want to get into is, once this situation happened with Tamar, I think that, and because I want to put this two different ways, the situation was not her fault, right? I do want to get into that because she was manipulated into this situation. But more than anything, the next verse that I'm going to get into is I think that oftentimes as women, we really need to understand when a situation is toxic, right? And so this rape situation, that's what happened to her, is not her fault. That's not what I'm saying. But I want to read the verse so that you can understand, how sometimes as women, we speak in the same way as Tamar to men when we know specifically that they are toxic. So it comes from 2 Samuel 13:12-14. And he said, "Come lie with me, my sister." She replied, "No, my brother, do not validate me, for such a thing is not done in Israel. Do not do this. This is a disgraceful thing. As for me, how could I get rid of my shame and disgrace? And you will be considered one of the most fools in Israel. So now just speak to the king about taking me as your wife, for he will not withhold you from me." But he would not listen to her, and since he was stronger than her, he violated and lay with her. So there's several points that I want to point out here, because really what Tamar was trying to do was to convince him that he was somebody other than what he was. He was a manipulator, he was a liar, and he was a bad man. So oftentimes if we get into a toxic situation, and the toxic situation could be emotional abuse, it could be physical abuse, it could be a lot of things. How many times do we try to talk the man into, oh, well, you could just take me as your wife, or, you're doing this to me and this is very shameful and disgraceful. But at the end of the day, a lot of the times it comes to, we need to stop talking and we need to start moving and we need to start leaving, right? And even though this was not Tamar's fault, I feel the need to reiterate that, because that's not what I'm saying. But I want to make a point here, because I feel like sometimes as women, whenever we are put in a situation with a man, even any man, even if he's a bad man, we feel like we must compromise our values and allow ourselves to be with him, to be their wives, simply because we don't feel like we have any other option. In the time of Tamar, it was actually true. When your virginity was taken away, she really didn't have any other option. But we're not, in that day and age anymore, in the sense that, and I'm not talking about the sexual aspect, let's take that out of it. But I'm talking about in the sense that when you are with a man, if you have put in years, if you have put in time, if somewhere during the time of being with him, you found out that he is crazy, that he is toxic, that he is manipulative, that he is an abuser, that he is just not the right person for you, a lot of women feel like, oh, I want to continue in this situation because I have invested so much time, or perhaps this is the best thing for me because I want to get married, knowing that it wasn't. And really, she was just talking to him before the actual act of him violating her. But at the end of the day, whatever she was saying was not going to change who he was. He is a bad person, right? So a lot of the times, women, we need to understand to stop talking and start moving. We need to stop trying to tell men and try to make them change, because some men are just bad men and they are bad men for us. And no matter how much we talk, it's really not going to change the fact that they are who they are. So the next one I want to get into is Tamar being used in abuse, because if you read this Bible story at the start of the book, it says Amnon was in love with her and blah, blah, blah. And I actually have a video on the difference between love and lust, and I'll leave it down below. But Amnon was not in love with her, because as soon as he ended up violating Tamar, if you go to 2 Samuel 3:15-18, it says Amnon became extremely resentful of her, for his hatred towards her was greater than the love which he had for her. And Amnon said to her, "Get up and go." That is not love. I think a lot of the times men will try to trick some women into believing like, oh, I love you, simply because they say I love you. But if their actions does not prove that they love you, then you need to pay attention more so than their actions. Or how many times have a man violated or taken advantage of you sexually, or slept with you, or had sex with you, whatever the case may be. And you feel like, oh, he loves me, he's not going to leave, and then he ghosts afterwards. How used and abused do you feel after that? And so you have to imagine that this is specifically what Tamar was saying, or that she was probably feeling. And people like Amnon, it's like I said, this is certainly a character flaw. Real men who genuinely love women do not try to trick them. They don't try to manipulate them. And they understand that love is beyond, oh, I need to do whatever I need to do to trick her to come into my room in order to have sex with her. And then once I get what I want, because that's very selfish, then I'm going to toss her out to the side, right? And so you can imagine how much trauma this was. And really so much trauma that Tamar actually then traumatized herself. Because then if we go to 18, I mean, she was already traumatized, but she tore off her own royal robes. And I have a video on this where I go more detail in this, because in verse 18, it says, now Tamar was wearing a robe of various colors, for that is how the virgins, daughters of the king, dressed themselves in robes. Then Amnon's personal servant took her out and bolted the door behind her. So Tamar put dust on her head in grief and tore the long sleeve robe which she had on and put her hand on her head and went away crying for help. So the thing about Tamar is that she kind of took on the responsibility of what happened, and it's not her fault. And I think a lot of women can definitely do this whenever they're taken advantage of in a situation. And it does not just have to be sexually, is that they take on the brunt of the responsibility, and therefore they now feel like, oh, I'm not as good as I was. Because really, yeah, he raped her, but it's like she has now had to tear off her royal robes, and she no longer feels worthy, right? Because this is what this symbolizes, to be addressed as one of the king's daughters due to something that wasn't her fault. For example, if by chance a man has taken advantage of you, or he has broken your heart, or he slept with you and then now he ghosted, some women will be like, well, fine, since he's going to do that, I'm going to become the same type of thing, and I'm just going to freely sleep with men because, you know, I don't want my feelings to be hurt, so I might as well give it to them anyway. But then it's like, you're compromising yourself and you are punishing yourself based on the actions of a man. And now you have diminished your own self-worth simply because of how a man has hurt you. And I think that we have to be very careful of not being bitter. We have to be careful of not being angry. We have to be very careful of not just losing all sense of our worthiness and who we are just because of some stupid man who wants to sit and take advantage of us. Because really, yeah, all of us make mistakes. In this case, it wasn't her fault. But even if you particularly made a mistake and you should have been like, oh, I should have known better. And I'm sure Tamar was telling herself that, oh, I shouldn't have went in his room and all this, that, and the third. Okay, fine. But at the end of the day, mistakes are mistakes, and we cannot blame what happens to us, and other people are doing things for us, and allow this to compromise our entire future. Because that's exactly what happened to Tamar, is that she went into obscurity and we never hear from her again. She punished herself so much that she literally robbed herself of her own future. And this was not her problem. This was the man who did this to her problem. And he went about his day, whereas she was sitting up there grief stricken and guarded and have developed deep emotional issues and trauma based on what was done with her, all the while her victimizer is just sitting up there going about his day like nothing happened. And I think that's one thing that we have to realize as women. Whatever relationships, family dynamics, past, whatever the case may be, has happened to you, do not allow yourself to continue to punish yourself so much so that you develop so many issues. And I have a video on this as well about developing so many issues that it keeps you stuck in one spot instead of allowing yourself to heal and to move forward. So the next one that I want to get into is how at this point, Tamar was just very unprotected, and there was nobody there to help her. And it was like, no matter where she looked, I'm independent and all that. I'll say that, until the cows come home. But I definitely also understand that, yes, you do want people in society to be on your side, to protect you, and especially when there has been an injustice in the world. And so in this particular instance, I'm going to go into what happened after Tamar was violated in 2 Samuel 13:20-23. So her brother Absalom said to her, so has your brother Amnon been with you? Now keep silent, my sister, but he is your brother. Do not take this matter to heart. Stop. I'm sorry, what? So she has reached out to her brother. You may reach out to your friend, your brother, your family, or somebody and try to express to them about something that is bothering you, about something that is going on. And in this situation, she was completely violated, and he told her to keep silent. He is your brother, and don't take this matter to heart. So basically, he was minimalizing everything that she had gone through. So even if she did want to take an opportunity to heal or to vent in that moment, he basically was like, yeah, no, be quiet. And that's not to say that he wasn't upset about it, because Amnon was. But just because he was upset about it, he really didn't help the situation by telling her to be quiet and to just, oh, he's your brother. Don't think too much of it, when really her virginity was taken away from her through like rape, right? So then it goes on to say, so Tamar remained secluded in her brother's Absalom's house. Now, when King David heard about these things, he was very angry, but failed to take any action. This was the second injustice done to Tamar in regards to the men who were supposed to be protecting her or the family. As I talked about before, to me, David should have taken on a lot of the brunt of feeling guilty about this because he was the one who sent her up there as her father and failed to protect her. But instead, it was like, oh, dang, it's just kind of like Absalom, like, dang, I'm sorry this sucks to you, but he's your brother. Let's choose to protect the person who is harming you or who has harmed you over than caring and validating over your feelings. And I think this can be very common, especially among women, how sometimes women, we're just told, oh, well, you're being emotional. Just get over it. Don't take this to heart, when really some things we really should be taking to heart. And in this specific situation, this was one of them. And so now let's go down to verse 22. But Absalom did not speak to Absalom either good or bad. Absalom hated Amnon because he violated his sister. Now it came about 2 years for Absalom had the sheep shears, and then he invited Amnon to a party. So really, was Absalom mad? Sure. Then 2 years kind of went by and he didn't say anything to his brother, which is like, okay, but once again, nobody ever did anything. Justice was not served. And Absalom actually did end up killing his brother Amnon to take justice for his sister. And I know you might be thinking, yay, this is helpful, but I think that we have to realize what is good justice and what is pointless justice. Because good justice would have been for him to be there for his sister. Because at this point, and this is my next point, Tamar was completely abandoned because her brother, Tamar, was living in his house. And so at this point, he was the only person that she was kind of relying on. And then if we go into 2 Samuel 13 through 37, after he had killed Amnon, but Absalom fled and went to his grandfather's house. And basically that's where he stayed for years on end until he went to war with his own father. And then ultimately he did die in war. So from Tamar's perspective, it's like, okay, you did kill my perpetrator, after telling me to be quiet and be silent, and maybe that might have brought her some satisfaction. But the only person that she had to rely on, which was Absalom, fled and ended up dying anyway. So I think an example that we can learn from this is that, you have to know what people are really helping you and what people are really hurting you, because really this entire situation, I don't know that once Tamar had heard, because she has lived in obscurity, the only protection that she has was Absalom's house. And that protection, once he fled and then now he died, we never know what happened to Tamar. And when somebody has done us wrong, sometimes you need to reflect, is the best thing to go beat up this person who has done you wrong? Yes, it might feel nice, but is this really the productive way to go if it's going to end you in jail or make you catch a charge, ultimately ruining your future? Sometimes we do need to check the way that we react. Sometimes we do need to check the way our friends react to people who have done us wrong, and not necessarily think like, oh, this my ride or die friend, she gonna do anything for me. And the things that you are doing against the people who have done you wrong are not helpful. They're not conducive, and they end up causing more bad than good in the long run. He didn't find a way to help her heal and say, hey, somebody still wants you, somebody still loves you. He didn't say, oh, this violation wasn't your fault, you're still pure, or anything like that. He just tucked her away. Don't take this matter to heart. Let me go kill this man, and then I have to flee, and now I'm at war with our father, which probably caused her more turmoil because she probably is taking on all of this. All of this is my fault. My father's at war. My brother's at war. My half brother is dead. This is a complete dysfunction of my family and breakdown of my family unit at this point. I think that it probably would have been better for Absalom to probably comfort his sister and be there for her to help her be in a healthy way, or maybe even get her away from that place. I don't know, but I'm trying to make it applicable to today, because so that you guys know that whenever you have suffered some type of injustice, no matter if it's in relationships, no matter if it's with your dysfunctional family, no matter if it's around your toxic friends, no matter if if it's at work, no matter what it is or where it is. There is a certain way that will produce good results after your trauma or after the wrongdoing has been done. And there is another way that will just drive the situation even further down to the point of aimlessness and pointlessness. And so each time we decide to have gone through something, we ourselves has to determine, yes, this injustice was done to me. Yes, this was wrong. Yes, this relationship went bad. Yes, my daddy got some issues and he didn't protect me. Yes, this was not my fault. No, this man was not who I thought he was. However, am I going to dwell and slash his tires and do all of this, that, and the third and make the situation worse? Or am I going to choose a path in which I can heal and not stay stagnant in this stuck place so that I'm not just off in obscurity, never regaining her royal position? Because that's what I like to tell Tamar. She ripped off her royal robes. She did. Nobody else did. She ripped off her royal robes, ran off. And so she kind of stripped herself of the royal position instead of being like, you know what? Yes, this wrongdoing was wrong to me, but I'm still a daughter of a king. Let's not play that. This is not my fault. I think there are some ways in which we can handle things that do not strip ourselves of our own blessings by internalizing the trauma that has been done to us. All right, guys. So I hope that made a whole lot of sense. And don't forget to check the description box once again for my Bible group, because I'm going to be doing Bible study videos and all that other type of stuff. And I'm sure when I get to the story of Tamar, I will have a whole bunch of other lessons that I want to teach. But this just goes to show how many lessons we can learn from the Bible that can be actually applied to our everyday lives in so many contexts. So maybe even you might read the story and get something different based on your situation. But I feel like the way that we do that is by reading the Bible for ourselves and by allowing God to reveal these things to us. So check the description box. Don't forget to join, and I will see you guys another day, another time. Bye, y'all. Not ready for the show to end? It doesn't have to. You can head over to my site where you can read hundreds of articles. And also you can feel free to shop my store where I have all of my products for sale. And last but not least, for even more video content, feel free to visit my YouTube channel where I talk about a wide array of content. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And until next time, stay blessed.